When news broke that Ian Watkins, the disgraced frontman of the Welsh rock band Lost Prophets, had been killed inside prison walls, the world reacted with a mix of shock and grim inevitability. Watkins, who had once sold out stadiums and charmed millions with his voice, met his violent end in one of the most feared prisons in Britain, HMP Wakefield, a facility notorious for housing some of the country's most dangerous and despised inmates. It was around 9:30 a.m. on a quiet Saturday morning when West Yorkshire police received a distress call from prison officials. A prisoner had been attacked in one of the high-security units. By the time emergency services arrived, Watkins had already pronounced dead at the scene. The initial reports described a brutal assault involving a knife, carried out by another inmate. Detectives from the Homicide and Major Inquiry Team quickly locked down the area, and investigations began immediately. For many, it was a dark but unsurprising end for a man whose crimes had horrified the world. Watkins was serving a 29-year prison sentence with an additional 6 years on license after being convicted in 2013 for a series of child sex offenses, including the attempted rape of a baby. During his trial, the presiding judge had called his actions plunging into new depths of depravity and described the case as one that broke new ground in evil. Inside Wakefield, prisoners are categorized based on their crimes, and child sex offenders, even among the worst criminals, often live in constant fear of attack. In 2023, Watkins had already survived a violent assault where he was stabbed and taken hostage by 3 inmates before officers managed to rescue him. That attack left him with non-life-threatening injuries, but it was a clear warning that he had many enemies inside. Now, 2 years later, that threat finally caught up with him. The man who once stood before cheering fans across the world was found lifeless in his cell, his story ending where it perhaps always seemed destined to, behind cold concrete walls and under heavy guard. HMP Wakefield, often referred to as Monster Mansion, has long had a grim reputation. It's home to some of the UK's most dangerous criminals, serial killers, rapists, and child predators. Within its thick, gray stone walls, power struggles and revenge attacks are part of daily life. The facility is divided by crime type and perceived threat, but despite heavy security, violence still thrives. A recent inspection report had warned that assaults inside the prison were increasing markedly, especially targeting inmates convicted of sexual crimes. Older prisoners, like Watkins, were particularly vulnerable. Many inmates despised him not just for his offenses, but also because of who he once was, a rock star who had fame, fortune, and fans before his fall from grace. In prison hierarchy, former celebrities convicted of child abuse rarely survive long without protection. Watkins had spent much of his time in isolation, but sources revealed that he had been allowed limited interaction with other inmates shortly before his death. On that fateful morning, guards responded to shouts coming from one of the secure wings. Inside, they found chaos. Watkins had been attacked with a makeshift knife, reportedly fashioned from metal parts scavenged within the prison. Witnesses later said he didn't stand a chance. By the time officers reached him, he was on the ground, bleeding heavily, while his attacker was restrained by staff. Emergency responders were called immediately, but his wounds were too severe. Police later confirmed they were treating the case as a homicide, with detectives from the Major Inquiry Team leading the investigation. While officials avoided speculation, insiders said the attack had been brewing for weeks. Watkins apparently had clashed with several inmates over his past crimes and his perceived arrogance. Some prisoners reportedly viewed him as unrepentant, still carrying himself with a hint of his old rock star confidence, even while serving time among society's most hated men. To those inside Wakefield, his death didn't come as a surprise. It was simply the prison's brutal system of justice, swift, silent, and merciless.
News of Ian Watkins' death spread quickly, first whispered through prison corridors, then across social media, and finally splashed across international headlines. For the families of his victims, the reactions were mixed. Some expressed relief, saying justice had finally completed its circle. Others said they wished he had lived longer to face the torment of his own guilt. For many who followed the Lost Prophets in their early days, it was difficult to reconcile the man who once performed on stage with raw energy and charisma with the monster described in court. Outside HMP Wakefield, police vans and media trucks lined the perimeter as investigators combed through every detail of the attack. West Yorkshire Police confirmed that a murder inquiry had been launched, and one inmate was placed in solitary confinement pending further investigation. The prison service declined to comment, beyond acknowledging the serious incident that had occurred, citing ongoing police work. Inside sources said officers were shaken. Despite the high-security environment, the attack had been fast and fatal. Watkins' death also reignited public debate over how sex offenders, particularly those of his notoriety, are handled behind bars. Some argued that even the worst criminals deserve safety and custody, while others felt his demise was inevitable given the gravity of his crimes. The story dominated tabloids for days, and online forums exploded with discussion, some condemning the violence, others calling it prison justice. In the music world, his death left behind an uncomfortable shadow. Lost Prophets music had long been removed from streaming services, and surviving band members had spent years distancing themselves from their former frontman. Watkins' crimes had not only destroyed lives, but also erased an entire band's legacy. For prison officials, it was another reminder of Wakefield's deepening violence problem. For the public, it was the final chapter of a man whose fame had once soared and then collapsed in unimaginable disgrace. And for Ian Watkins, his story ended where all his lies and horrors had led him, alone, despised, and silenced forever. What happened to Ian Watkins inside HMP Wakefield will forever remain one of the most chilling reminders of how far a man can fall from fame to infamy. Once adored by millions, his life became a cautionary tale of how power, fame, and darkness can collide to destroy everything and everyone around it. In the end, Watkins didn't just lose his freedom, he lost his life, his legacy, and any trace of redemption. Stories like this remind us that behind the walls of every prison, there are deeper layers of justice, some carried out by the system, and others by the men who live within it. Whether you see his death as vengeance or simply the harsh reality of prison life, one thing is clear. Ian Watkins' story ended in violence, and his name will forever be associated with one of the darkest scandals in modern rock history. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. This story isn't just about a musician. It's about accountability, morality, and the consequences of a corrupted soul. Evil may hide behind fame for a while, but eventually the truth always finds its way out. If you found this story powerful, don't forget to check out our other videos exploring shocking celebrity downfalls and hidden truths behind fame. You'll find stories that go even deeper into how success can turn into tragedy overnight. And before you go, be sure to watch our recent video about Anika Nils's secret technique that impressed Rush instantly. A completely different story that shows the bright side of talent and hard work. It's a reminder that not every artist uses fame for evil. Some use it to inspire the world. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us as we uncover more unbelievable true stories from the worlds of music, fame, and crime.